Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we are going to talk a little bit more about the settings and preferences menu in Maya. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the basic overview of settings and preferences. We're going to talk about polygon selection and ways to customize what you visibly see on the screen. We are also going to learn about ways to create custom shelves and turn on and off your or I should say clean up your user interface. All right, let's get started. So to get started, let's go ahead and navigate to the preferences menu. Now you can do this one of two ways. What we'll start with is the longer way, and that's Windows, Settings and Preferences, Preferences. And it's very important that you kind of understand the long way before you do the shortcut way, just in case your screen doesn't have all the buttons that mine does. Now the shortcut way we've talked about in another video is the orange man running with a gear, basically trying to saw him in half. That's my favorite way. So it gives you the same exact window, the same exact screen, and so forth. So here are our preferences. Now when you go to your preferences, a lot of you are going to be using lab computers. Now lab computers are great. One, they're free. But you got to realize a lot of other people have used these computers, and maybe the preferences that you're using are not to your liking. So one of the first things I do is do restore default settings, and that's going to take it back to the default settings that I have set for Maya. Now in my case, it changed my grid color back to normal. And let's go through each of these menus. This is a great way of kind of organizing your Maya scene, and I'm going to kind of narrow mine lower here. When I click on the word interface, it tells me what menu set is default when I open up Maya. Now currently it's on modeling. If I wanted to change that, let's say I animated a lot, I could go ahead and do that as well. The modeling subset menu though is perfect for what we're doing. Show menu bar. Now, this is one of the most common questions I get asked by beginning Maya users. They say, hey Matt, I opened up Maya and I'm trying to find the option, the little panels button. I cannot find it on my viewport. Where did it go? Well, that is called your menu bar, and I tell them to navigate to Interface in your preferences and click In Panels. So the In Panel menu bar, the on and off switch is there. The panel toolbar is the same exact thing. Now, you'll see when you do this, it gives you a little hotkey that pops up, Control-Shift-M. Now, what typically happens is people are using hotkeys to navigate in Maya, and they accidentally deactivate a hotkey menu. This is where you would turn them on again. Again, remembering your size and position of windows, loading icons, changing some elements there. The most important thing is that that there's in panels and show toolbar. We can actually enable different types of mouses. If you have that, you can enable multi-touch gestures. So that's all just in the interface tab. Now, the UI elements tab is important as well because this shows you what visible user interface elements are available to you on your screen. Now, we're in a modeling class. Therefore, we most likely will not play with the animation elements. Some of the animation elements that are common are things like the time slider and the range slider. Also the command line. So I like to open up some real estate, so to speak, and I turn those three options off. At any point, if you want to turn them back on, you can simply go into your preferences and do so. Now the only problem with this is when I turn off the range slider, I lose my little preferences dude that's here at the bottom right. So you may want to keep that on, or for preferences, you may just go the traditional way, Windows, Settings and Preferences, Preferences. Maya likes to repeat itself too. So that's kind of the important elements in here. Let's kind of move down the way. Now, the view cube, I currently have mine turned off permanently, but some of you may have noticed you have a cube in the top right corner. This is your view cube. So if you don't want that on, you can simply uncheck that box. I typically don't use it. I use my Alt button and my user controls to kind of work with it that way. Here, help, you can again enable or disable errors and messages. We have display. which typically you're not going to touch. And so you'll notice the things I'm typically not going in and unclicking, I wouldn't do that either if I were you. We're not going to play with some of these. We're going to go straight to polygons. For polygons, what we can do is turn on specific default types of polygons. So we can have elements, so we can show them out. Let's put a polygon in the scene, see what we can see. We can show the number of faces. We can turn it on to show the number of vertices. We can shade kind of our material to start with. So that's all very important. I typically, again, don't mess with this particularly. In settings, here we can change our world coordinate system. So for instance, if you are familiar with any game engine, in certain game engines, Z is actually up and down, and Y and X are the back and forth side to side. So we may be able to change that in Z before we import it into a game engine. Those are all very important. So settings, interface, and UI elements are your three important structures in there. As I go down further, down further here, the selection tab and the snapping tab and all these other elements become very important. And why the selection tab is so important is it allows you to kind of set what your marquee is like, how it works, but more importantly, it allows you to do one other thing. So let me go ahead and we haven't kind of gone over this yet, but I'm going to scale this box up and I want to show you this component. So right now, if I go to grab a face of this polygon and I highlight over it, it selects the whole face. Now, some people like that, while others prefer to do the method where it just selects the center face. So the whole face is unchecked and the radio button for the center is checked. And if I hit save, let's go back to face mode here. It still kind of highlights the whole face, but what it does is give you a little dot and it allows you to visualize the face better for when you're moving around. Now, I typically actually like this method better. It allows me not to kind of mess up as much. And for instance, so if I wanted to drag over just the top face, it's not accidentally grabbing the side face as well. Let's go back to our preferences here and go back to selection so you can see that. Again, whole face or center face. It's really up to you. I'm going to keep my center faces on. So in further lessons, if you're wondering why I have a dot in the center of my geometry, that's why. So we'll hit save. So that's basically your preferences in a nutshell. Those are super, super important to kind of understand what's going on. Now, we are in a real-time modeling class, so one of the other important factors is optimization. So some of you will have to be very aware of our polygons. So currently we have a basic cube, but if you want to turn on your heads-up display, what you're going to do is go to Display, Heads-up Display, and we're going to go and find PolyCount. Now what this does is open up a little chart for you so you can see the number of edges, which are these, vertices, which are those little dots, and faces that are in your scene. It also breaks it down into triangles. Even though we don't have any visible triangles, it's calculating the number of triangles that if we were to triangulate this for a game engine, in which would show up. Now, we have other options that we can do in here as well. One of the main options I like to do after turning this on is I like to turn on my wireframe on shaded. This helps me visualize my model a little nicer before I start working. Now again, if you still haven't put an object into the scene, you can do that. If not, just turn these items on, and when you save Maya, it will be kind of ready to go for you. For the UI elements, you can turn them on and off as well in the display setting. So if I need to turn on my time slider again, I can do so. In our case, I'm going to turn it off. So UI elements time slider off. Please go ahead and do that. That's going to make it important. I'm going to turn my channel box and my attribute editor tabs on, so they're going to be highlighted in blue. And let's go ahead and let's make a custom shelf. Custom shelves are super easy to make and super easy to kind of add things to them. So if I want to go ahead and make a shelf, I'm going to use the shelf editor. And to use the shelf editor, I'm going to go ahead and navigate to this little gear in the top left corner of your screen. I'm actually going to delete this shelf so we can have kind of some room. And let's go ahead and let's start with our new shelf. So let's click the gear and say new shelf. And we'll call this, let's call it real time, and then put modeling. If I could spell, you guys are going to learn I don't spell very well. There we go. We'll put a little space in here. That's okay in this aspect. And we're going to hit OK. And it says, oh, this shelf, it contains illegal characters. So I'm going to say real time. Maybe the space was not good. Modeling. There we go. Now we have a real-time shelf. So anything that we use, we can add to the shelf. So let me go ahead and delete some of the objects. Let's say I use a sphere, all right? And I constantly want to put spheres into this shelf or into the scene. So rather than keep going up and down to spheres, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we add it to our shelf. So to do that, what we're going to need to do is to use our hotkeys. Excuse me. And these hotkeys are going to be imperative when adding these elements, because what they'll do is they'll basically create buttons on your shelf. So let's do a hotkey. Let's see what we can find. Let's add, I have my control turned on too, so hold our shift key and our alt key, I believe. Pardon me, our shift key and our control key. All right, so to add a custom button, now you can see I can keep creating spheres to our shelf. You're going to use your control key, not your command key. If you're using a Mac, it's your control key and your shift key. And I apologize, my control key actually, as you guys have noticed, controls my zoom, so I had to kind of deactivate that. So if I want to make a sphere or if I want to make a cube, I simply highlight over my attribute that I wish to select and hold down the Control/Shift at the same time and hit the left mouse button once, and then you'll have your tool. Now at any point, if you want to delete an item, you can right click over it and right click and just simply hit delete. So let's say you want to do save scene up there. You can hold Control and Shift, save scene. There you go. And that's very important. So hopefully you can see we can delete the shelf here as well. You've picked up some tricks and tips to allow you to better customize your Maya interface, thus hopefully helping you have a stronger workflow within Maya. All right, guys, I'll talk to you in the next lesson.